Mr. Erasmus. Once Erasmus, always Erasmus. The Erasmus generation. But what is this Erasmus? Do I eat it with a spoon? Is it spicy? Does it bite? Well, let's find out, because it's a really interesting story and this video turned out way differently from what I was expecting. Our story starts in 1466 in Rotterdam, Holland, now is Netherlands. A child is born as the second illegitimate son of a priest. The name of the child? Desiderius Erasmus. The schoolboy Erasmus was actually, you know what, I'll not bore you with all the details. Fast forward, Erasmus meets a bishop, goes to the University of Paris to study theology, meets Thomas More, and TLDR. Erasmus helped to build what may be called the liberal tradition of European culture. But Erasmus merely started this idea of liberal tradition of the European culture. Starting in the 17th century, after the signing of the Peace of Münster, the idea, or we could say the tradition of the Grand Tour started. Grand Tourists, as they were also called, were touring through Europe, which, because it was the 17th century, was only undertaken by the upper-class young European men who were wealthy enough or were powerful enough or had rich enough sponsors that would allow them to travel around the continent. One of the influencers of this phenomenon in the early modern period is Thomas Carriot, who published 2 volumes of writings he left behind regarding his travels through Europe and parts of Asia. He's also known for his description on how Italians shielded themselves from the sun, which introduced the term umbrella in the English dictionary. Examples of people attending grand tours include, but are not limited to, Joseph Edison, a writer and politician, which may also known as the creator of the essay as a literary species, Mark Twain, creator of classics like The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, and Edward Gibbon, whose most relevant work may be the history of the decline and the fall of the Roman Empire. It was considered that travel and liberal education would open the minds of the youth. Important stations during their travels were, amongst others, Paris, Venice, Milan, Rome, and German-speaking countries. Skip a few decades until 1865, Sophia Jex-Blake is taking a trip to the United States to learn more about women's education. She was strongly influenced by developments in co-education in the US. At the New England Hospital for Women and Children in Boston, she met one of the country's pioneer female physicians, Dr. Lucy Ellen Sewell. This was a turning point for Jex-Blake. She realized, I have to do medicine. In 1867, she wrote directly to the president and fellows of Harvard University requesting admission to the university's medical school. They received a reply a month later in a letter which stated there is no provision for the education of women in any department of this university. Keep in mind that in Europe by this time no women had been allowed the education in medicine in order to become a medic, but she would not accept defeat. In 1869, Jex-Blake's essay Medicine as a Profession for Women appeared in a book. In this, she argued that natural instinct leads women to concern themselves with the care of the sick. However, with the education of girls being restricted to domestic craft, women generally could not qualify to compete with men as medical practitioners. However, she argued that there was no objective proof of women's intellectual inferiority to men. She said that the matter could easily be tested by granting women a fair field and no favors, teaching them as men were taught and subjecting them to exactly the same examinations. She applied to study medicine at the University of Edinburgh, and although the medical faculty voted in favor of allowing her to study medicine, the university court rejected her application on the grounds that the university could not make necessary arrangements in the interest of one lady. She then advertised in the Scotsman and other national newspapers for more women to join her. A second application was submitted in the summer of 1869 on behalf of a group of 5 women initially, with 2 more joining them later in order to make up the group of Edinburgh 7. In 1874, Sophia Jex-Blake helped establish the London School of Medicine for Women, but also continued campaigning and studying. The Medical Act soon followed, which was an act to repeal the previous statute, while also permitting medical authorities to license all qualified applicants, whatever their gender. Jex-Blake died in 1912, but her legacy and the legacy of the Edinburgh 7 lived on, which leads us nicely to the Erasmus program. The idea of promoting cultural, societal and academic exchanges between European students originated in 1969 with Italian Sofia Corradi, nicknamed Mama Erasmus. an educator and scientific consultant for the Permanent Conference of Italian University Rectors. Her role allowed her to raise awareness about this idea and make it known in the academic and institutional spheres. The project created was called the Erasmus Program, which is an acronym for European Community Action Scheme for Mobility of University Students. Oh wait, how was that program called again? Erasmus Edinburgh 7. By the time the Erasmus program was adopted in June 1987, the European Commission had been supporting pilot student exchanges for 6 years. Although it was formally adopted only shortly before the beginning of the academic year in 1997 and 1988, it was possible for 3,244 students to participate in Erasmus in the very first years. Since then, all of these countries joined. From 1987 to 2006, over 2 million students benefited from the Erasmus grants, and the European Commission aimed to reach a total of 3 million by 2012. By 2006, over 150,000 students, or almost 1% of the European student population, took part in the Erasmus program. The proportion is higher among university teachers, where Erasmus teacher mobility is roughly 2% of the teacher population in Europe. Erasmus has now become the Erasmus Plus. It got a budget of 14.7 billion euros, and it's got a catch-all framework program for education, training, youth and sports. And all of this leads us to today. Now the Erasmus Plus provides grants for a wide range of actions, including the opportunity for students to undertake work placements abroad, and for teachers and educational staff to attend training courses. Projects are divided into two kinds. They are either formal or non-formal, but they are focused on education, and each of them has 3 key actions. In 2018, the European Commission adopted its proposal for the next Erasmus program, with a doubling of the budget to 30 billion euros for the period of 2021 to 2028. Brexit came along, and the UK government decision not to participate in Erasmus meant that the UK students lost access to the Erasmus program, and the EU students lost access to the UK universities. So now, Erasmus looks like this. As a student, you are privileged enough to get 12 months of Erasmus Plus, which means a monthly grant, the Erasmus Students Network support, and legalities handled by your universities. Those 12 months you can spend on study mobilities, either for a semester or 2, within Europe and in some cases outside of Europe as well, or on traineeship mobilities, which can be short-term, for example for summer, or long-term, for up to 1 year, where you can get paid as well as get a grant from the European Union. But you don't necessarily have to be a student in order to benefit from the Erasmus Plus program. This program also finances Erasmus Plus Solidarity Corps, where you go volunteer for a while at an NGO around Europe. Training programs for youth workers with no age limits, where sending organizations from different countries organize together a mobility in order to teach young people and youth workers. Staff mobilities for people working in education, where they can learn from their peers around the continent. Youth exchanges, where young people aged 13 to 30 meet. Erasmus Plus for young entrepreneurs, where you can work at a company, or rather a startup, around Europe. And Erasmus Plus for pets.
Morning, I'm coming to you from the Directorate General for Education, Youth, Sport and Culture at the European Commission with breaking news. Today, the Commission has launched a new pilot initiative, Erasmus for Pets. Yes, that's right, the popular student exchange program will in 2019 be expanding to dogs.
This whole Erasmus thing clearly exceeded what anyone in history could have expected, and I'm grateful for it. Thanks, Mama Erasmus. Thanks, Erasmus. Thanks, Sophia, and all of the pioneers of this incredible mobility potential. Thank you for taking the Grand Tour, this experience that only nobility could enjoy just a few centuries, if not decades ago, and make it into a commodity for any European. For that, I thank you. But with that being said, I've also got to ask, does Erasmus really work in what it set out to achieve? First up, to address this question, starting off with myself. My answer is yes, absolutely. This opportunity and privilege was fundamental to my development for who I am today. I'm also grateful for the experiences I've had, the history I got the chances to see for myself, to really understand and to get it when it comes to other cultures, to others' histories, to our common customs, and to our ability to work together within the European Union, and how much of a miracle this piece right now really is. It's absolutely incredible to see just how incredible the improvements of the quality of life are, both for myself, after having been part in some Erasmus Plus projects, and in the lives of so many other people I know, and I'm aware how important it really is. But we got that subject out of the way. Now for the objectivity part. Let's crunch the numbers. First up, I was amazed by the fact that during my research I found this paper which concludes that the Erasmus Plus is actually biased gender-wise. And is biased towards female students. Damn how the turns have tabled. A study on the impact of European Union students' exchange program shows that graduates with international experience fare much better on the job market. They are half as likely to experience long-term unemployment compared with those who have not studied or trained abroad. 27% of Erasmus students meet their long-term partners while on Erasmus. And on this basis, the Commission estimates that around 1 million babies are likely to have been born to Erasmus couples since 1987. But I haven't been able to find any statistics on feeling more European. The Erasmus effect is a term I heard being coined as the idea that just by being in proximity and contact with other Europeans from other European countries, then a European identity must emerge. And this is where the problems with Erasmus Plus begin. The YouTube channel Romulus created this great video called "Can the EU Create Europeans?" In this video he mentioned that the more formally educated a person is, the less likely to be impacted by Erasmus Plus. The whole idea of Erasmus Plus isn't helpful because those who feel more European are already the ones more educated, who have closer access to more Erasmus Plus opportunities. The marketing and the messaging of the programs really doesn't reach that far into the population that isn't already identifying with the European identity. And those who aren't identifying with the European identity are highly probable to be opposing the idea of going on an Erasmus. When I used to go to Erasmus related events around my university, I'd usually see the same people. And the idea of Erasmus is relying on the idea virus, on people spreading Erasmus to their peers, who will go on another Erasmus and they will tell their peers. But this cycle of perpetuating mobilities doesn't really work like that. Another point of contention is the quality assurance of Erasmus Plus projects. When it comes to youth mobilities and youth worker trainings, the organizations hosting the mobility are in full control over the budget, but they have no real limitation on how much they can cut from where, and in some situations it can get to a point where the quality of the housing or of the food or of the location, or even worse, the actual education conditions are being cut, or are not only suboptimal but rather detrimental to the experience. And last but not least, are those trainings worth it? Are the people going there actually learning? And since it isn't clear whether an European identity is being created, does it even make sense to refill the Erasmus Plus budget with so much money while that money could be spent in other ways, like rebuilding the infrastructure of the member states or providing higher quality healthcare? I guess the future of Erasmus Plus is also the future of Europe. We are dealing with the first ever Erasmus generation. This is such a recent phenomenon in the grand scheme of history that in order to see results, the continental scale really requires more time to perpetuate this identity. But the gap between those identifying as Europeans and those strongly opposing appropriating a European culture is getting larger and larger. Yes, it is easier than ever for absolutely anyone born in Europe to experience some mobility, but it's also getting harder to get people on the fence to take the chance to do mobility. Maybe the one reason why Erasmus, and by extension the EU, will be able to hold will be because of new countries being added to the cultural mix. Or maybe that may be its demise. Maybe new generations will be appropriated into another cultural heritage because of the actions we do today. I can't really predict the future. The current times are really good for the opportunities of the youth, but I don't know for how long that will last in an ever-increasing tensions of our current times. But one thing I know for sure, from the pool of people that have been on an Erasmus that I've managed to talk to while making this video, the Erasmus experience is about personal growth. It's about the struggles of dealing with culture you don't know as much, about conversing with people, talking a language you understand little of. It's about becoming a little more sure of yourself, a little more confident that whatever life throws at you, you'll be able to deal with. And yes, in some cases, even feel more European. I think Erasmus put it best. The main hope of a nation lies in the proper education of its youth. It cannot hurt us to have better educated people, more experienced people that have experienced more of our continental culture. Whether they stay within their home countries or they leave for new lands, whether they identify more as Europeans and travel around Europe for the rest of their lives, or they get more dedicated to improving how their country works, Erasmus is improving the lives of young people. And I hope it will improve your life too. See you when I see you.